Hi, my name is Da-Eun, and my topic is the effects of voice-based AI chatbot on Korean EFL middle school students, speaking ability and affective factors. First, introduction. In relation to computer-mediated communication, that is CMC, another attention to the use of a chatbot for EFL learning has been paid. The chatbot, also known as Chatbot or conversational bot, is a software system that can chat with a human user using a natural language such as English. With the development of artificial intelligence and virtual assistants, chatbots have been progressed and have enabled EFL learners to join more quantitative and qualitative conversation. Aside from learner-to-learner interactions through CMC, the utilization of chatbots in foreign language learning has also drawn attention. Considering that chatbots have been used in language learning fields, and learners can communicate with chatbots through not only text input and text output, but also voice input and voice output. It is needed to explore the effects of voice-based chatbot on foreign language learning. Particularly, given that speaking competence has been considered as the most essential part in EFL environment, it is necessary to explore the effects of voice-based chatbot on Korean EFL learners' speaking ability. Also, previous studies clearly demonstrate that a human-robot interaction approach is a significant factor in the motivation, anxiety, and so on. Thus, it is needed to explore the effects of voice-based AI chatbot on learners' affective factors in foreign language learning. So, research questions are posed as follows. First, what are some effects of voice-based AI chatbot on Korean EFL learners' speaking ability? Second, what are some effects of voice-based AI chatbot on Korean EFL learners' affective factors like interest, belief, motivation, and FLCA toward English learning? Second chapter is methodology. As for participants, 44 middle school students in Korea participated in this present study. The participants were freshmen placed in the same school. They were segmented into one experimental group and one control group. And finally, these two are formed. Students AI chatbot voice chat and student voice chat. They were engaged in different types of chat sessions during the 10-week experimental period. The chat sessions were to be conducted in English as well. As for the research instrument, the AI chatbot used in this study is called Affective, a voice recognition smart speaker developed by Amazon.com. The device connects to a voice-controlled virtual assistant service that responds to the name Alexa, and the wake word can be changed to Echo, Amazon, and computer by the user. Not only you can activate the device with a single core command, but also enter the utterance Alexa, let's chat to switch to social bots, enabling natural communication. In addition, Affective can set alarms, play music, play audiobooks, create to-do lists, stream podcasts, weather, traffic, and other real-time information. Although it was not developed for learning English, the basic language is English, so the command is carried out only in English, not in Korean. So to investigate the effects of AI chatbot on the participants' speaking ability, all participants were asked to take speaking tests as pre- and post-speaking tests before and after the experiment. First, students choose 2 of the 10 topics they want to talk to. Second, students had 2 minutes to think about the topic they were talking about, and then communicate with the teacher about 2 topics of their choice for 6 minutes and 3 minutes for each topic. It took about 10 minutes to complete, and the scores ranged between 0 to 120 in total. The participants' responses were recorded, submitted to the researcher of the current study, scored by trained raters following the scoring guides on a basis of specific evaluation criteria. So the reported reliability for this test was 0.857. As for the affective factors, structured questionnaire-based surveys were carried out before the pre-test and after the post-test to see whether there are any changes in the participants' perception of Chatbot-assisted language learning. Questionnaires were included to provide insights into the participant interaction with the chatbot and to offer a more comprehensive view of perceptions and reactions to the chatbot. The pre- and post-questionnaires were developed on the basis of the previous research, Han and Kim. Questionnaire items were composed of 15 closed items, that is, belief, motivation, and interest. FRC A, that is, foreign language classroom anxiety questionnaire, was used to assess the level of anxiety in language class before and after the treatment. It was developed by Howitt. The FRC-A questionnaire measures anxiety about communication, examination, and negative evaluations. It was modified by Kim to focus on communication anxiety and anxiety about negative evaluation. The evaluative statements were designed to be scored on a 5-point Likert scale from 1 to 5. The questionnaires were translated into Korean. The reported reliability for this questionnaire in Korean was 0.876. Next, treatment procedure and data collection. This study adopted a present pre-test, treatment, post-test design to document the outcome of Chatbot-assisted language learning for Korean EFL learners. The main independent variable, AI chatbot, represents the treatment of the experiment. The whole study lasted over the course of 1 semester of the 2019 academic year at the middle school in Korea. The experimental group engaged in a chat with voice-based AI chatbot and practiced conversational skills. Participants in the control group, that is student-student chat group, were randomly divided into several groups, and during the experimental period, they engaged in an oral interaction with the same chat group partners. The participants engaged in 20-minute voice-based chat once a week for the duration of the experiment. This made for 10 chat sessions in total, with topics related to the textbook and students' daily lives, including school life and classmates. For data collection, in order to take an examination of its effects on the participant speaking ability, the materials for the current study included pre- and post-treatment speaking tests. And in order to compare the changes and group differences in students' affective factors toward English learning, structured pre- and post-test survey conducted. Next, data analysis. Data for this study was collected from quantitative methods. First, data were collected for the analysis of improvement of speaking competence, which compares pre- and post-test scores. Then, data from pre- and post surveys were analyzed to examine whether there are any changes in participant affective factors of AI chatbot-assisted language learning. The scores of the pre and post tests were analyzed utilizing SPSS 23. So descriptive statistics as well as pair sample t-test were reported to examine how the synchronous chat sessions influence the differences between the two tests. The third chapter is results and discussion. So first, effects on learner speaking ability. The main purpose of this study was to explore the effects of voice AI chatbot on Korean infant learner speaking ability. To examine the changes in mean score pre and post test, statistical methods employed were paired sample t-test, and table 1 shows the descriptive statistics and t-test result regarding pre and post test mean scores. The finding of the paired sample t-test indicates that Chatbot can yield positive results for EFL learners who chat with voice-based AI chatbot. As shown in Table 1, there were significant mean differences between pre and post tests on English speaking ability. That is, voice-based AI chatbot leads to the improvement of the learner speaking ability. To be specific, in terms of pronunciation, mean scores were 13.18 on the pre-test, while 16.36 on post-test. The result of fluency also showed significantly positive trends, with the mean scores of 13.64 on the pre-survey and 17.73 on the post-survey. Regarding the language use, a significant mean difference was found between pre and post test. The mean scores were 12.73 on the pre-test, while 18.64 on the post-test. So it indicates that the learners in the experiment will use relatively accurate vocabulary choices and grammar after having a chat with a voice-based AI chatbot. In addition, their test completion level jumped from 12.83 on the pre-survey to 19.9 on the post-test, and it was significant. On the other hand, as for the control group, as shown in Table 2, there was no significant mean difference between pre and post-test related to pronunciation, fluency, language use, and test completion. Next, effects on learners' affective factors. In this study, another purpose was to understand the effects of voice-based AI chatbot on EFL students' affective factors toward English language learning. In order to compare the changes between pre and post surveys, pair sample t-tests were carried out before and after treatment. Table 3 and Table 4 show the descriptive statistics and t-test results regarding pre and post surveys. As seen in Table 3, as for the experiment group, there were significant mean differences between pre and post surveys regarding interest, belief, motivation, and FLCA. The learner's affective factors toward English learning changed positively over time. To be specific, regarding participant interest in English learning, a significant mean difference was found between pre and post surveys. The mean scores were 2.94 on the pre-survey, while 3.36 on the post-survey. So it indicates that the learners in the experiment group became more interested in English learning after having a chat with a voice-based AI chat. And learners believe about the improvement of speaking ability also showed significantly positive change, with a mean score of 2.74 on the pre-survey and 3.25 on the post-survey. That is, the learners involved in chat with the voice-based AI chatbot believed that they were improving their speaking ability more than before. And in addition, their motivation level jumped from 3.06 on the pre-survey to 3.56 on the post-survey, and it was significant. This indicates that the participants were more motivated to acquire English speaking ability as a result of chatting with the voice-based AI chatbot. Finally, as for the FLCA, a significant mean difference was found between pre- and post-survey. This shows that human and AI chatbot interaction reduces learners' level of anxiety in English class. However, in the case of control group, as shown in Table 4, there was no significant mean difference between pre- and post-surveys related to the participant interest, belief, motivation, and anxiety. This seems to be because there is still considerable amount of anxiety or fear that can be felt due to learners' poor English speaking skills and introversion in the context of speaking in front of other friends. Overall, survey responses of the participants in chatbot group positively changed. Learners who experienced chatbot-assisted language learning had a great bond and believed that they were learning English more effectively with the chatbot. Also, learners' anxiety about speaking in English, tests, and negative evaluations gradually diminished during speaking activity with the chatbot. Consequently, it allowed that learners to increase their motivation and interest in language learning and decrease their anxiety, making beneficial effects on the improvement of communicative competence. Results of this study provide empirical evidence for the use of voice-based AI chatbot in improving the learner's positive perception of language learning, which can consequently result in successful foreign language acquisition. Given that learners' perception of language learning are said to be a significant factor affecting their language development, the present study provides insights on the use of chatbots in foreign language classroom setting, suggesting that if the teachers should attempt to integrate chatbots into their classroom. The last chapter is conclusion. Major findings of the current study are as follows. First, voice-based AI chatbot can effectively contribute to the improvement of speaking ability among Korean EFL students. Voice-based AI chatbot enables students to practice output, engaging in oral interaction between interlocutors. They now provide foreign language students a means of practicing language without regard for time and location. Negotiation of meaning, a particular way of interaction which helps foreign language students develop their language skills, can now take place during oral interaction with voice-based chatbot. Given that improvement of speaking ability is necessary for effective foreign language acquisition, it can be suggested that chatbot-assisted language learning can result in successful foreign language learning. In addition, survey responses of the participants reveal that integrating AI chatbots into foreign language learning can be effective in increasing EFL learners' belief and enhancing their motivation, and promoting interest, and decreasing anxiety in English conversation. So, findings of this study provide empirical evidence for the use of AI chatbot in improving learners' positive attitudes toward English learning. In particular, the present study provides insight on the use of voice-based chatbot in the foreign language classroom in that they positively influence learners' interest, belief, motivation, and anxiety level. This suggests EFL teachers should design the most efficient types of AI chatbot-based tests for their pedagogical goals when they attempt to integrate AI chatbot into their classroom. These findings can yield some pedagogical implication for EFL teachers. Teachers in EFL settings need to consider chatbots as a new and interesting technology and apply them into educational settings, specifically in teaching and learning of foreign language. Finally, for the effective use of chatbot technology in EFL class, the class should be designed to consider learner barriers such as learning aptitude or familiarity with technology. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening my presentation.